I work for the Species Recovery Trust, which is a small charity in the UK, focused on recovering at least 50 species from the edge of extinction by 2050. I've worked on invertebrate conservation over the last sort of 20 years, and for the last 10 years, I've had the great honour to be working with St Helena, which has been fantastic. Today I'm going to speak about planning. So why plan? I know sometimes there's quite a lot of scepticism that planning maybe isn't that useful, that people spend a lot of time talking and writing these plans and then they just sit on a shelf and gather dust. But actually, the IUCN, who I learnt a lot of my conservation planning skills from, have done some research and looked at particularly species plans. They took 35 plans, looked at the extinction trend for those species pre and post planning, and found a significant relationship compared to species that don't have any kind of planning work done for them. So it does show that having a good quality plan for species recovery can really have a big impact. So why do we need to look at invertebrate conservation and planning for St Helena? In the UCOTS, there are around 1,000 endemic invertebrate species, and that 1,016 is about 65% of all the endemics in the UCOTS. So endemic invertebrates are really key in the UCOTS. So of that, 26% of all the UCOT endemics are actually St Helena's invertebrates. So of all the UK overseas territory endemics, a quarter of them are the invertebrates that are on St Helena. So it is a massive sort of bit of unique biodiversity. So those over 400 species are really, really important. And many of them are threatened, of course, as well. Having done the red listing, we've kind of seen that many come out as either critically threatened, endangered, or vulnerable. So there's obviously a lot of challenges to do this conservation work. There's obviously the direct threats. So invasives is obviously a really key one, as well as habitat degradation, as well as many other things. So there is a real need to kind of work out how to manage these threats. There's obviously kind of challenges as well when you're looking at invertebrate conservation. It's very reliant on project funding. There isn't kind of any unrestricted funds to allow the work to happen. So you do have to be aware of what your resources are. Obviously, knowledge and skills. So invertebrates are a difficult group to work on. So actually having the knowledge and skills to do it. So support internationally, as well as obviously increasing skills on island. There's capacity issues. So there's only so many people present on island. So there's only a kind of limit to the number of people that can work on invertebrate conservation. And obviously with the high number of endemics and the high number of red list statuses, it does make this really a very challenging situation. So when you have over 400 invertebrate endemics on an island, where do you start in terms of planning your conservation to make it as effective as it possibly can? So we obviously can't have 400 different plans for all those species, because that would just not be not feasible, and to deliver that many different plans. So the best way of looking at it was to actually look at a multi-species plan, to actually look at the overall threats and issues for those species and what the action would be. So that resulted in 2 multi-species plans being developed. So there's been 2 versions so far. The last one we've just recently finished back in 2023, and that one's currently running. And then there was one before that as well. So we have already had 2 multi-species plans, and I'm going to talk through those. And then in addition to that, we have actually had sort of one flagship critically threatened species plan for the Spiky Yellow Woodlouse, obviously the big iconic species for the island. So it was made sense to have an individual plan for that species as a key flagship. There is also as well been some initial work looking at the false gunwood leafhopper, another critically threatened species, which is very much on the edge of extinction in terms of its host plant, and the false gunwood also being very critical. So that has had a workshop, but it's still being drafted is that plan. So I'm not going to talk about that one today. So the first one I'll talk about is the Spiky Yellow Woodlouse plan. It was, we had two different versions of it. This one's the second one. As you can see, there was a lot of different people involved in actually collaborating with this, a lot of different organisations, obviously the key local organisations in terms of the trust and the government, but then also a lot of support internationally as well to actually bring the plan together. So the process to develop the two plans, the first plan, we did an in-person workshop and also had people on Zoom from St Helena, and that kind of provided sort of a space for kind of doing good thinking and initiating the initial draft of that first plan. And then for the second plan, we actually did it through consultation. It was felt that there probably would be quite a lot of replication between the two plans, and it would be more efficient just to do a consultation exercise for the second plan. So that was kind of a simpler, easier way of doing it, making sure that the plan still happened and stayed valid, but also not taking up time that wasn't really needed to achieve it. So the vision for that plan was for the Central Peaks cloud forest and its unique habitat, which is biodiversity valued, to be restored and expanded, because obviously the cloud forest is really key for this species, to enable a viable population to exist in the cloud forest, and then that species to be a flagship for the conservation of the peaks, but also for all invertebrates. There was a series of goals underneath that. There was a habitat goal around increasing and improving the habitat, as well as delivering restoration techniques and management. Then there was research on obviously its ecology, population dynamics, and as well as looking at what a viable population would be and optimal habitat. There was awareness in terms of raising the profile of the species, as well as invertebrate conservation and the peaks. And then there was actually a goal around resourcing as well for the plan. So in terms of the successes, what's been achieved through that plan. So the first plan, there was a project associated with that plan, which Amy Jane Dutton delivered, and that really increased the sort of ecological knowledge for the species. So there was a better understanding of the plants that it was occurring on. It was originally thought to be mainly on tree ferns, but that research showed that actually it was occurring on a lot of other plants as well. It was also identified that it could be monitored by UV as well, and actually more effectively through UV on a night. There was a population estimate of 980, which was established, so we had a bit of a better idea of how many actually Spiky Yellow Woodlouse there were, which was much higher than was previously thought. And there was also a lot of restoration planting that went on very specifically in key areas for the species. So then going on to plan 2, there wasn't a specific project, but a lot has been delivered through the Cloud Forest project. So there's been a confirmed presence of Spiky Yellow Woodlouse in restoration sites through the Cloud Forest monitoring, which is a really kind of good success, something really to be celebrated, to have the evidence to show the benefits of the restoration. And there will be also at the moment, they're developing the next stage for doing the resurveys to give a population estimate as well. So hopefully that will be initiated next year with project funding. Genome skimming was done, so we now have better DNA knowledge for the species, which could be helpful in the future. And there's quite a lot of good outreach as well done through the Cloud Forest project, and obviously the Spiky Yellow Woodlouse was part of that. We do still have a lot of research gaps, though, particularly for the plan. So there is a real need to kind of look at that. And one idea is hopefully to get a PhD started, which could help fill a lot of the knowledge gaps for this species, because it is quite hard to get that level of research done through existing projects. So to go on now to the terrestrial conservation invertebrate strategy. So again, a really great collaboration of different organisations, again, led by the Trust. Natasha Stevens was really key in getting the strategy coordinated and delivering the workshop on Ireland. And then also St Helena government have been really key, and it was great working with Isabel Peters to work through the adoption process as well for this plan. So it was impressive how many people we got actually at the workshop. So there were 41 people who attended the 2-day workshop. 27 were in person on St Helena, which was brilliant. I think that, yeah, our first strategy, we only had about 7 people involved from St Helena. So it really shows the increased interest and momentum around invertebrate conservation. And then we had 14 internationally as well, including a lot of people from the UK, but also from the Azores in Germany.
5 minutes, please, Vicky. 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned, it was a remote and in-person workshop, both for the first strategy and for the second one. The vision ended up being that St Helena's unique invertebrates and their habitats are secure, connected, healthy, and are locally and globally valued and understood and celebrated by future generations, which I think is a really nice, neat, good vision. So it was great to have that in terms of what the long-term aim of the strategy is. And the goals that sit underneath that, we have research and monitoring, so understanding trends, also getting best practice methods and standardized methods. Habitats, obviously, more habitat, better quality, more connected, reducing the impacts of existing invasive species, identifying new invasives, making sure that the development is more responsible and sustainable in terms of invertebrates and their habitats. Also, better resources, which is also key to actually deliver the plan and increase local capacity to do research and conservation action for inverts, and then education and awareness to raise the profile of the invertebrate fauna. So again, what have the successes been? So from Plan 1, we saw there was a lot of different restoration projects going on, and a lot of them started to have invertebrates more embedded in them. And actually, when the cloud forest plans were being developed, actions were taken directly from the strategy and embedded into those plans, which was really great to see. And as a result, the cloud forest project has a really strong invertebrate component. From the plan as well, the invasive invertebrate project was developed and delivered. That saw control of ants as well as wasps, and actually the ant control showed an uplift of endemic leafhoppers as a result of the control that was done by the National Trust through that project. We've had invasive risk assessments, invasive invertebrate risk assessments, through another project, for the Cloud Forest project, and a horizon scanning exercise, which include invertebrates, increased skills and capacities. So we actually have the invertebrate team embedded in the National Trust, which is fantastic, with seeing skills like with the invertebrate specialist like Lisa, who was in the first ever project and is now kind of the leading person for invertebrates on Ireland, as well as Natasha and Darryl have all come on, which is really great. Surveys and mitigation for developments has been taking place for invertebrates. So key endemic areas such as Horse Point have seen surveys done and mitigation being developed. The checklist, which Roger's done, has kept going and has been really useful, and we did 120 red listings as well. For the second plan, there's the Invertebrate Forum, which is now developed and is sort of helping to lead a lot of the work. We've had the Cloud Forest again, which is increased monitoring, and we're getting better endemic detection. So as well as the Spiky Yellow Woodlouse, other endemics are getting detected in the Cloud Forest. We've got restoration protocols for invertebrates for the Cloud Forest that have been developed by Lisa. Red listing of over 106 species are now have just been reviewed and about to be published So that'll take us to around 230 red list species. Our DNA work, some work that Natasha did looking at wasp stomachs with Ferra, show that through the DNA work that endemics were being eaten by the invasive wasps, so we can see the threats and how to manage them. We've got research needs document, a code of conduct on how to sample invertebrates are both drafted. We've got St Helena Eye record, obviously collecting more invertebrate data, a great data exercise by the Trust to improve the invertebrate data set, and the NCA project is also embedding invertebrates in terms of the NCAs and making sure that invertebrates are fully covered there, which is great. So challenges, there's obviously still an awful lot of work to do. There's big gaps in terms of habitat, particularly the drylands, scrublands, and freshwater habitats. And obviously there's a desperate need for more resources to be able to overcome some of those limitations for the plan, for both of the plans. So all the existing plans are available online if you want to see them, either on the government website for the terrestrial invertebrate one, or they're both on the Atlantic Island Specialist Group website, as well as the National Trust website. But it's really great because St Helena has been a trailblazer for, particularly for the multi-species plan, as well as for the invertebrate plans, because there aren't that many around. But it's great to see that there are starting to be successes and momentum because of it. If anyone's interested in getting more engaged or think they have ideas, please do get in touch to discuss things. Just a bit of acknowledgement, a big thank you to the Invert team that are based at the National Trust, and everyone else who's involved in the St Helena invertebrate work and also the forum. And yeah, a big thank you to everyone who attended all the workshops, and yeah, Natasha and Isabel for helping with the terrestrial one, and thanks to Lisa and Roger, because I used a lot of their photos in this presentation.